All right, welcome to the Intro to OSHA class. This is your first lesson in 2 hour. Well, this is a 2 hour lesson, but the whole program is a 10 hour uh, uh, training program that you guys are just starting on. The purpose of this introduction is to give you some information about what OSHA is and some of your rights as a worker and how to file complaints. It's going to be a 2 hour lesson. When you're done with this lesson, you're going to have only 8 hours left. So hang in there. This is going to be full of information, but stuff that you can use immediately when you get a job. So what I'd like you to do is, if you don't have a pencil and some paper, I'd like you to pause the video, get some pencil and some paper, and get ready to take some notes. I'm going to have some questions for you to do in another activity, and you're going to need some paper for that. So without further ado, let's get started. This is a little short video to kind of give you, it's kind of comical, funny video, but it's going to give you an idea why we need OSHA. Like what would happen in America if we didn't have the Occupational Safety and Health Administration dictating or telling us what safe work practices are like. If it weren't for OSHA, we might be doing this type of work in the United States. Okay, so you don't want that to be you. Definitely not. No job is worth your life. No job is worth the risk of being severely injured. So we're going to be working through this presentation. Again, make sure you have some paper and some pencils. You're going to need to record answers to these questions. So we've got 10 questions here. I'd like you to pause the video and copy the questions below. And as you are watching the presentation today, you'll be recording the answers to these 10 questions. So go ahead and pause the video now and get these questions written down. The purpose of this lesson is to give you an introductory information about OSHA, so you know what OSHA is, what their mission is, and what is their, why do you care? Like, who cares, right? So number one, why is OSHA important to you? Number two, we're going to look at what rights do you have under OSHA? Number three, what responsibilities does your employer have under OSHA? What do the OSHA standards say? Number five, we're going to look at how are OSHA inspections conducted? And number six, where can you go for help inside and outside of the workplace? So why is OSHA important to you? Number one, OSHA began because until 1970, there were no national laws for safety and health hazards. So what it looked like was there was just above 14,000 people were dying at work a year, but prior to OSHA. So after OSHA, we see that number's down around 5,600, and even more recent statistics bring that number down even a little bit more. So from before OSHA, we had 14,000. After OSHA, we're now down, around 5,000. That's a vast improvement over what it was. And we're talking about 9,000 people per year are alive today because of the standards that were put in place in 1971. On average today, 15 workers die every day from job injuries. Now I want to stress that's not just construction, that's every industry. And the 15 workers don't necessarily die because of unsafe practices, but they do die at work. So it could be someone who's elderly and they just die and they happen to be at work while they do it. A lot of those, though, are because of unsafe work practices that could be avoided. A lot of these deaths are avoidable. So 5,600 Americans die from workplace injuries annually, and there are 4 million non-fatal injuries and illnesses every year. So some discussion questions, just some things I want you to think about. When did you hear about OSHA? Was it when you walked in my class? Have you heard of OSHA before? Maybe your uncle, your father, or someone else knows about OSHA. What do you think of OSHA? So what do you guys think OSHA's job is? We want to answer those questions in the next few slides. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull up a fatality report just to prove the point that a lot of workers die in the U.S. And what I want you to do is just, as you read through the fatality report, this is going to be a question that you're going to have to answer from the previous slide. So when you see the report, take a look, hit pause, read through them, and I want you to select at least one for the answer to that question. So without further ado, take a look. Okay, so this is a fiscal year fatalities. This is basically a month and a week worth of fatalities. If you look at the date here, you can see that each one of these, like this one here, is the description of a individual that died. This over here tells you that it was a fatality. This column here, this header, gives you the description of the incident. This tells you the company and the state and the zip where the company is located. And this tells you the day that it happened. So on the 7th here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different fatalities in the United States, all workers working at their job. So you'll see here, this one here was struck and killed by a collapsing wall. This worker here was killed in a fall from a roof. This one here was killed in a vehicle collision. This worker here was killed, fatally crushed under a vehicle when jacks collapsed. And on the 7th for Xerox, a worker killed in a motor vehicle collision. So there was, like I said, 5 or 6 on that particular day. And you can see that for the 6th, there's probably about the same number. And this just goes on and on and on here. So you can see that there's a lot of them for basically a month. Actually, I need to go slower for you. So let me go to page 2, pause, page 3, pause. Four. Okay, so there's enough fatalities there in a month and a week for you to easily complete that question. And we're going to return to full screen here and continue on.